Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between to the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it's one of your favorite places to check out podcasts later on in the week. Is a lot going on in the world of sports as we start to wrap up 2024 and head into 2025. Is DJ joined as always by my co-host Kelsey as we're getting ready to discuss a little bit of football, a little bit of baseball, and a whole lot of money today in a very unique sense of way, because there's two different stories that revolve a lot around money, but they're in two completely different ways.
Yeah, bags flying everywhere. You never know where the next one's going to come from. But so far, it seems to be floating around the upper Northeast. But yeah, no, it's been an impressive time of year for players looking for getting paid. And you know what? Speaking of that, by the way, NBA Cup happening right now. So you're getting closer to winning that midseason. What did LeBron call it again? Waste of a banner.
So probably something insulting, although for everyone, like the 9th through 11th, 12th, 13th man on the team, that's an extra $500K they don't normally get. So for some people, it's a waste of a banner. For other people, it's a jump on all their bills. So, it's 6 and 1 and half a dozen the other.
Exactly. So bring me the money as well, I got to say.
Hey, it's the same here as well. I will jump on any team's 15th man if that's the opportunity for it at the end. And
I can be Bronny Jr.
Well, yeah, you know what? Who would argue at this point too? I mean, I normally have a clever retort for these, but that's what I got nothing for this one. You're spot on with that.
I can do what I can.
Either way, that's a good way to lead us right into the tip-off. And the tip-off, if you're new here, is brought to you by our good friends over at SeatGeek. Use code BellyUpSports for $20 off your first set of tickets, whether it's a sporting event, a concert, anything that requires tickets. You get $20 off your first purchase. And we're going to go and start on the diamond. No pun intended there, because we're going to talk about Juan Soto securing not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not even 7, but just under $800 million from the Mets. $765 million contract. 15 years, I believe, is the number as well.
Yeah.
Largest contract in MLB history. More money than if you combined LeBron James and Tom Brady's, just their sports salaries from NBA and NFL, more than if you combine their career earnings. My goodness, the Mets, wow. We'll start there with wow. Holy cow. Kelsey, are they making money moves or are they making major mistakes?
I don't know what the Mets are doing. I am in a very small group of people that believes that Juan Soto is not that great of a hitter. He does have timely hits, but he's a below average fielder. So you are purely paying, what is it, $41 million a year for a hitter, which in today's day and age, people care about. What I don't care about are the strikeout numbers. And I've said that 1,001 times on the show. Strikeouts should be a penalty. It should be a problem, and it's not anymore. People don't care about it. If you hit 25 to 30 home runs a year, they're going to be like, all right, that's good enough. And in Soto's case, he does hit more than 30 home runs a year. I'm not going to take it away from him. But, yeah, I don't know. This one tears me up a little bit on the inside just because he didn't defer any money. So I don't get to have a Bobby Bonilla day for the Mets after Soto's career is over. It's $15 million that they got to pay up front. So that does suck. But, yeah, no, it's crazy. It doesn't surprise me he got it back. I honestly, with the way the market was going, this is kind of the next logical step. But this reminds me of a Deshaun Watson conversation we just had about a contract where it's all within the life of the contract. And, yeah, I don't know if this is the right move for the Mets because they have so many other problems they need to fix, potentially that rotation being one of them. And I don't know where the money's going to come from. That's – at this point in time, you don't have a quadrillionaire owner. He's not even close to that. You are giving $750 million to one player over the next 15 years. That's going to hamstring some folks on being able to make deals. So I don't know. It's a weird deal for me for the Mets, but I guess you got to pay what you got to pay.
I want to say too, I think he's a really good player as well. I like to consider him as the best second option in the MLB, if that makes sense. If he's your best player, chances are you won't be in the World Series. But we saw last year when he was the number 2 guy in the Yankees, they just ran into the ultimate juggernaut of the Dodgers. There wasn't much they could do there, but they steamrolled everybody else. And I'm saying Juan Soto is still like a top 15 player in the game, arguably 15 to 20,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. I think the richest contract in MLB history might be a little rich for my taste for a guy who's, like you said, a good hitter, not elite hitter, but really, really good, and an okay fielder, maybe. Not like you're not talking Aaron Judge in the outfield or anything like that. You're not talking somebody who makes a lot of game-changing plays out in the outfield. You're not talking about Steven Kwan out there, for example, somebody like that. Talking about a really good hitter, an average outfielder, and the most money in MLB history. And if you're the Mets, too, did you not learn your lesson from 2 years ago when you had the biggest set when you had the highest payroll in MLB and didn't even make the playoffs? I think you were out of it by what, Ju July, August, something like that when they had the highest payroll. They were eliminated rather early. It's
Mhm.
very questionable decision making for a good player, but and once again, I'll say this, not faulting Juan Soto in the slightest bit. If he did not take this, we'd have our own set of questions for him. Like, you take this deal if you're Juan Soto. I'm more concerned at the Mets for offering it. This is more than Otani got last year, who, by all account purposes, Otani's considered a top 2, 3 player in the game. Juan Soto's not quite in that conversation. Granted, during the playoffs, he was the Yankees' best player you can make a case for, considering the Aaron Judge playoff roller coaster that we have come to know and, depending on if you bet on it or against it, love or hate. And so I
Mhm.
think he does get a little credit there, but that's a lot. Where do you go if you're the Mets? Like, does he does he drive that much in sales tickets? Does he bring that many people into where it just offsets? That there's just a lot of I don't know. I'm literally having trouble thinking of words this one because I really can't believe that it actually happened. I know there was the Juan Soto sweepstakes, but I thought it would cap at like 500-600 million, which would still be a lot. I didn't think we were getting the richest contract in MLB history. But also, before I turn it back over to you, I'll give kudos to him. 2 years ago, the Nationals turned down was it a 15-year, $440 million deal or something like that, and he got about a 75% increase, something like that, 80% increase on it. So you know what? Maybe my math's a little bit off there. Maybe it's about it. You get what I'm saying. He went from getting 440 to 765 million. Kudos to him on that one. But the Mets, that I don't see them winning a World Series during this 15-year run unless they have some incredible drafts or just someone springs up out of nowhere. But it's a normally you pay this kind of money if you're already just about there. I don't think I know they made the playoffs. I know they won a playoff series. I don't know if this puts them over the top. I could be wrong. I don't know if
Yeah.
this is the move that puts them over the top, though.
I think that's accurate. And it's funny because I look at Francisco Lindor, who's still on that roster. Dude finishes second in the MVP race last year. Has more voting points than Soto in the American League did. Soto finished third in the MVP voting race. You have two guys now that you got to win now to try to do anything with, and because you're not going to be able to pay Lindor the next time around, a guy who has just gotten better in his time with the Mets, and you're going to have to pay him again. And that's just the problem here is now you're not able to pay him. And again, what are you going to do with arms here? Like, how are you going to bring arm talent into New York and sustain them for longer than 1 year? Because in baseball, it doesn't just happen in 1 year. It can happen in 1 year, but it doesn't. Not for a long term turnaround. Like, you have to work this out over years. And right now, the writing seems to be on the wall that they're going to have a good offense, but I'm never going to take that away from Juan Soto. His ability offensively is very good. Again, though, he strikes out just as much as he walks. Last year, he barely beat his strikeout total with walks by 10. 129 walks to 119 strikeouts. Yeah, if I'm going to have a superstar player, I need him to be better at reading pitches and getting on base. And I'm saying that knowing full well he finished tops in OBP last year, but I don't care. It needs to be record setting. If you're going to get this much money per year, I need record setting talent. I don't need second best player on a team talent. And so far in his career, he has been second fiddle in every place he's been. Been second fiddle to Bryce Harper when he took over as the number one player with Washington. They didn't win. They got way worse. Turns down that contract, goes to San Diego, second best player on San Diego, potentially third best player, depending on your opinions on Tatis or Machado, depending on how you think they play versus Soto. And then in New York, second best in New York behind Aaron Judge. He has his moments to carry the cape, just like Robin always had his moments to be Batman. But are you legitimately paying $41 million a year for a Robin? Is that where we're at with baseball now? This just it screams we're insignificant and we needed to make a splash, and that's what this screams to me. We couldn't let Big Brother keep winning, and that's not how baseball should be. There's more money spent in this contract than the Guardians have spent over the last 7 years combined for a roster.
Which is both an indictment on the Guardians and an indictment on the Mets all at the same time. Like we managed to throw two birds into two stones.
It's crazy, man. I don't know what to do with this contract anymore. Like it's such a crazy number. Good for Juan Soto. Good for his family in the future. This is life-changing, eternity-changing money for his family and his heirs 2, 3, 4 generations removed. Because this is crazy. But at the same time, what does that mean? He's still in the New York market. You get all this, you're flush with money. You're a 26-year-old kid. I say kid, but 26 years old. You're still in the prime of your career. This spells bad idea all over it. And then there's the stats about 10-year contracts or over 10-year contracts and players playing through them and actually succeeding. It's like 2 out of the last 20 that have been signed. A guy actually made it to the end of the contract. So, I don't know. This is a little. I have so many hesitations on this. I feel like a complainer. Like I feel like I'm just complaining to complain. Like I feel like the get off my lawn guy, but at the same time, like this just doesn't make sense. But if it's the way the market's going, then I guess all right, so be it. I don't feel like inflation got that high in the baseball free agency market to get here. But I mean, I guess Shohei offsets every market. So this is what the next result is.
What I will say is I do really hope that everything that the Mets wanted from this actually plays out. Like I do hope he ends up being worth it because that's going to make that Dodgers and Mets series in the playoffs next year that much more electric. So I do hope, at least for this year, it is worth every penny. Like we said, that my trepidation is the fact that you're doing this for 15 years at this rate, which is absolutely insane. But I do hope this year pays off because I want to see that Mets Dodgers rematch with it's an arms race at this point too. It's like the Warriors and the Cavaliers just put them in the same conference where they were just loading up for that handful of years. So I want to see that. And also, it does make it easier to root for Juan Soto now that he's not part of the evil empire in New York, as far as the Yankees, I should say, at least. So he doesn't have to change his zip code or even his house. But for the people who are diehard haters of the Dodgers and the Yankees, it makes it much easier to root for them. So, I guess there's a winning thing for that. Everyone in baseball does win in a way, except for Yankees fans, which in itself is a win.
I don't need any more competition in the NL. So now the Giants. Now, by the way, the Mets are the replacement for the Giants. I continue to say they're actually the replacement for the Giants and the Dodgers in the New York market, and they suck like they would be the replacement of the two teams. So, I hate it because now you have more competition, and now you have. Here we go. The Mets are trying to do something again. Can it actually happen? I don't know. Because we're not getting a Darryl Strawberry, Mike Piazza type of reincarnation here, I don't think.
I don't think so either. I hope I'm wrong because it would be a lot of fun. And maybe somehow, some way, maybe somehow we end up getting that a Subway Series in the playoff, in the World Series like we almost got last year. If we're going to get the Yankees in there, let's get the Mets in there just for fun. But
you got to beat the Braves first, though, and the Phillies.
Yeah, so they have a long ways to go. And they're good luck with that at this point. But go ahead and let us know down in the comment section below what you guys think of Juan Soto with the record-breaking contract, at least until next summer. We'll see if somebody else breaks it next summer. But for now, a record-breaking deal. But speaking of record-breaking deals, well, I don't really got a record-breaking one with this next topic. But there are some things that sound like they are breaking as we're going to head now to the city of brotherly love. And in Philadelphia, for the quick synopsis, basically A.J. Brown, after their last win against Carolina by the skin of their teeth, more or less saying that they need to improve their passing. And then Brandon Graham goes on the radio show, says they used to be friends, not so much now, and that there's some beef there and they're going through it. Since then, everyone has dispelled it. Basically, A.J. Brown's dispelled it with he had a media scrum resemblance of the old Terrell Owen days, if everyone remembers those. And of course, we've already gone all that as well. So I'll go in before we get into it. We do have our good friend Hector jump in. So Kelsey, are the Mets contenders before we jump into the Eagles? Do you think it makes them contenders or did they stay homeostasis?
I think they stay where they're at. I thought they could be contenders last year. Again, you got to get past the Braves first and the Phillies, like in your own division, and that's not going to be easy. Obviously, things got easier with Max Fried going to the Yankees to get past Atlanta, but Atlanta's reloading with healthy guys again next year. Like that's tough. And then you still have to beat the Phillies. and that's not going to be easy either. So I don't think it makes them immediate contenders. I think it makes them contenders over the next 3 years. Yeah. But I mean, I hope I eat my words because I do hope they succeed. I just, that's a lot of money, man.
That's a lot of eggs in that basket, that's for sure. I think they're a little bit better. The problem is I think everybody, like you mentioned, is also going to be a little bit better. So the question is,
Healthier at least.
yeah, which especially the Braves, my goodness, them just getting healthy better. So that'll be the question: is there a little bit of better, still a little bit of better of those? So that'll be the question. And then there's the Dodgers, who are still a problem. So
Yeah,
we'll see exactly. But back to Philadelphia now. Seems like there could be trouble in paradise, but at the same time, we know how things, where there's smoke, there's fire. But sometimes it's just a little brush fire. It's not a full forest fire. We a little bit worried about the dynamic there in Philly because that passing game has been awfully ugly. But at the same time, last time we heard this, the next game, A.J. Brown scored 3 touchdowns. The last time we heard there was complaints. Ironically, they played the Steelers that time, and they're playing the Steelers this week.
I have zero worry. Eagles fans that are worried about this, calm down. Everybody else that's worried about this, put away your fan mangas. Like, this is a pipe dream for everybody hoping that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to implode. Because if they're going to implode, it wasn't going to be because of their offense at any point in time. And that's no slight to A.J. Brown, no slight to Jalen Hurts. But right now, they don't need to win. They don't need to work well. They need to be just simple offense because you have a guy by the name of Saquon Barkley who is breaking records over a 4-game stretch. Dude has over, 600 yards and 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games by himself on the ground, not including any passing yards. He's putting up video game numbers. He's doing video game things. So, of course, A.J. Brown's going to be unhappy. But mind you, A.J. Brown, by the way, in the last 4 games we can even go into, the dude has over 260 receiving yards, and he has 1 touchdown reception. Could he have more? Absolutely. Does every receiver think they should have more? Absolutely. Does every star have an ego that they need to feed? Absolutely. Do I blame him for being upset if he is upset? No, because any good player wants to be fed. They want to put the team on their back. But the problem is, in Philly, you have too many good guys to just be concerned about one of them succeeding, because it's kind of like basketball with the 3-headed monsters that you can see it with teams. You know, sometimes one guy eats and the other don't. And this is the case where Saquon's eating, but A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith aren't necessarily exploding off the scene. They're doing well. They're doing well enough. But, you know, I think it's dramatic. I mean, I made the joke in our group chat that it's just because A.J. Brown hasn't had his yearly Chipotle break. And I feel like that's if we're going to take this seriously, that's as serious as I want to get with this. Because this is just, if it's drama, it's just stupid drama. It's somebody trying to spice things up in the media to get something going. And this is coming from an Eagles hater. Absolutely proud of that fact. I will hate on the Eagles every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. But you know what? This is just stupid. Like, this is overly dramatic from no rhyme or reason. A.J. Brown is always going to have an ego, and that's not a problem. I have zero problems with any receiver in the world that's good having an ego. And Jalen Hurts is going to be Jalen Hurts, which is as politically correct as can humanly be. He is Russell Wilson without the fake. Because Jalen Hurts is just legitimately like that. He just legitimately is as chill as can be and as neutral as can be. And he's just like, yeah, we'll do whatever it takes to win. Whether that be handing the ball off 25 times and watching Saquon scamper for 120 and 2 touchdowns. Or, well, I guess it's 120 and no touchdowns while Jalen gets 2 1-yard touchdown runs.
Well, hold on now. Saquon's getting his touchdowns. He's breaking from 40 each time now. So
yeah, exactly. You know, I have my own complaints about Saquon not getting the ball at the 1-yard line, but I'll leave that for another topic. But no, I think for this one, A.J. Brown, like, it's overly dramatic. You're 3 games removed from 100 yards and a touchdown. Nowadays, in today's offenses, people aren't putting up 100 yards receiving every week. It's acceptable. Yeah, outside of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson last year. Like, it's crazy to think that we're at the point where a little over 1,000 yards at the end of the season is more than acceptable for a receiver, because you have quarterbacks throwing for 200 games as a good game now, 200 yards in a game. So, yeah, like, the passing doesn't bother me. Their defense scares me a little bit because they shouldn't be giving up that many points to Carolina, but I digress.
Carolina's be good all of a sudden.
Yeah, and Jalen does have some. I mean, Jalen has some moments where he gets too safe with the ball, and that's fine though. At the end of the day, I think Jalen needs to do that. So yeah, the beef doesn't bother me. Just put it in a Philly cheesesteak. You'll be fine.
I see what you did there. I'll take I'll have the same agreements, but I'm gonna do some different math to get to the same equation too. Obviously, I don't like you said, every awesome receiver like that's gonna want the ball, understandably. I mean, against Carolina, he had 2 catches for 30 yards or something like that.
4
That's
for
not
43.
4 for 43, still not a whole lot too. And
Still averaged 10 yards a catch, by the way.
Yeah, and 2 of those came in the fourth quarter when they were icing the game too. So throughout the course of the game, it was very inactive. He was doing cardio.
Yeah.
I think my issue is not that issue. It's that Brandon Graham, who is part of that locker room, I know he's out right now with injury, is the one who came out and said something like that. My friend, you've been around in the NFL for 15 years, 16 years. You have a Super Bowl ring. You're a fringe Hall of Fame contender-ish player. Like you're in a conversation to be a future Hall of Famer potentially. You know better than to say this, man. You know better than to say anything like that. You know better than let that out. Like you're not a 22-year-old straight out of college, out of Wyoming. You know better. Sorry, Josh, that wasn't a shot at you. I just picked a small school I could think of. Like you know
Utah
better.
State. Utah State is what you meant.
There we go. Any tiny school that has no like real major media program because they have. My point being, you know better than that, Brandon Graham. You can't let that out. You went to Michigan as well. You know better than all of that. So that's first things first. Second of all, that passing game has been anemic in recent weeks. It has not looked very consistently good. It is very spotty at best. So for the playoffs, they will need to tighten ship just a little bit. Obviously, like you mentioned, Saquon is carrying the rock, and if he's going to tote it, that is how your offense is going to roll. But when push comes to shove, you want to see when you have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, 2 number 1 receivers, and Jalen Hurts, a former MVP caliber quarterback, just a little bit more crispness, a little bit more cleanness when you need it. Like against Carolina, they nearly threw that game away. If Xavier Legette catches that, who knows? This might be a completely different conversation. And by the way, Xavier Legette might be one of the funniest players in the NFL, but that's another
story. Yeah.
So I think there is some not concerns about that. There's just concerns on the tape, if that makes sense. So I think they do have some things to work on. I don't think it's because of that. I do think I'm taking the A.J. Brown over this week for receiving. We're going to start with it right now. I think he's getting the ball this week. And I think that is going to be good.
Spoiler for one of the legs of DJ's best bets.
Well, let's not get hasty now. I got to see the actual numbers. That might just be a separate DJ one. I don't know. I don't want to say it's the best one since they put his over under like 87. I might be reluctant. But I think they'll be fine, but there is something to take out of this, and that pass game needs to get consistent. Multiple times, Devontae Smith has had games with like 2 catches for 4 yards. He's way too good for that. And A.J. Brown, 4 for 4. That's a top 7 receiver. Somewhere in that range. You got to find a way to get him going more than that because it's going to make Saquon's job easier. Right now, Saquon is on an otherworldly pace, but I don't know if you can ride that for the next 2 months through a Super Bowl run. You got to be able to balance it out. So there's a little, so I'm going to say no trouble in Philly, but there is some things on tape that you could stem from this to look at. But like you said, stockpile that cheesesteak, throw some pepper jack on it. Yeah. Not worry about this quote unquote controversy.
Look, I think the real beef here, if there's going to be any beef between these two, let's not forget, one's a Bama guy at heart and one's an Ole Miss guy. We all know the controversy that just happened with the college football playoff. Well, guess what? Beef's over. Neither one made the playoff. So that beef is squashed. And you can really slather that up with the Wiz at this one.
Get in there.
Exactly. Like you both got shafted. So here we are. Like now you can stop, complaining to each other. And that's the thing, like with the Brandon Graham thing, I almost wonder if it was like a subterfuge type of comment. Like he really wasn't making a commentary on them actually having a beef, legitimate beef. Because the way he said it was really weird, right? It wasn't like he just came out and said, no, I mean, they just aren't seeing eye to eye. Like, one could be better at reacting to things, and one could be better about the way he said he takes things. And that almost sounded like somebody said,
now. That's like, it was very weird how he put all those.
It almost sounded more, he's like, sounds more like a stupid college beef than anything. Like, that's what I felt when I listened to it. I laughed really hard when I was listening to his interview. And when he says those words, I'm just like, that's not a serious comment. Because he kind of says it with that cheeky Brandon Graham smirk that, like, I know what's going to happen after I say these words. Because you're right. He has been through the media training, which is why I'm like, this dude is just out here playing games with everybody else. He's playing 40 chess while we're all playing checkers. And this is just one of those things just to mess with. Honestly, I'm going to stand by. They might be having beef, and it might be over which is the best cheesesteak in Philly. Like, this is the beef we might be legitimately having. And because one does have a deal with one cheesesteak company, and I think the other has the other company. So Yeah, there's two main ones in Philly, obviously, for those that don't know. But yeah, you guys can do the research on that. But no, I mean, look, at this point in time, I just don't take it seriously. AJ Brown's going to set up his second highest yards per catch of his career this year. It's been a downturn from his first 3 games with a touchdown and 100 yards in the first 2, and then 89 in the third game. But he's been averaging 5 to 6 catches a game, and that's just the offense they're in this year. There's not a lot of ball to go around in the passing game because you're handing the ball off 20 times to Saquon. Like, that's just where it is. And your defense isn't really doing a whole lot to help you get the ball back. They're doing a lot to shut the other team down, but they're not getting the ball back quickly. And so that's part of this.
I would say he was technically right when they said, "What's up with the offense?" The passing game is a little bit up with it.
Yeah,
They do got to work on it, but it's not to the same extent that we turned it into because you have a runner like Saquon Barkley on pace to set the record and pass Eric Dickerson, which is a good segue into our next topic is the MVP race really heating up after this week. You got Saquon Barkley, as you mentioned, Josh Allen putting on a little virtuoso performance in a loss against the Rams, but 6 touchdowns is 6 touchdowns. Jared Goff's right in the mix of things as well. Of course, you can't rule out Lamar Jackson either. The MVP race is heating up. How are we feeling about this one, Kelsey? We got about a month left. At this point last year, it was CMC, Tyreek Hill, then Lamar kind of on the outside looking in, who then ended up beating those two, and those two kind of fell off and got his way into an MVP, to an unanimous MVP with civilian-ish stats compared to what he's doing this year, especially. Do you see somebody, maybe Jared Goff or someone doing something like that this year? Do you think Saquon breaks the quarterback trend? How do we feel about the MVP race with about a month left?
I want Saquon to win it. And again, this is coming from an Eagles hater. But I'm so tired of quarterbacks winning the MVP just because they're a quarterback when there is a well-deserving running back behind him. And you know what would solidify Saquon's case is if the 11 times he's been tackled at the 1-yard line, he was given the ball 50% of the time.
30% of the time even.
11 times he's been tackled at the 1-yard line, and 10 times Jalen Hurts has a 1-yard touchdown rush. And then Saquon, 0 handoffs at the 1-yard line. That never makes any sense. And honestly, that's just irritates the hell out of me. And it would, honestly, add 10 touchdowns to Saquon's total, and that he's his hands down MVP.
It's not even close.
Oh, it's ridiculous how good he is. Right now, Josh Allen is the betting favorite right now. He's minus 400 to win it all. And that speaks volumes. I hate that he is that high. I think he's had a great year. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was my MVP choice going into this year. But
minus 400 at this point is a little wild because 1 or 2 games could flip things on its head real quick.
Yeah, but the way they're playing, it's hard to think that he's not going to win it. And so, as much as my heart wants to say Saquon can come out here and win this MVP title, it would take him to have 9 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns over the next 4 weeks. That's not out of the realm of possibility, especially how many times he gets tackled on the 1. But that would have to take the Eagles to play him all game and actually hand him the ball off. And so that I just don't think it's there. You would also have to break Dickerson's record as well. And that I think is possible. I just think the touchdown part of it, I just think where he's going to lack. And Lamar has an outside shot, but I don't think he's there either. So I'm going to say Josh Allen is my odds-on favorite. I'm going to stick with that. I think the low-hanging fruit is the safest option here, where he is the MVP. If you take him off the Bills are awful this year. And with him on the Bills, it checks every box for what you want from an MVP, except for one. But last year you proved you don't need every single stat line in the world to be the MVP. You just need to be able to win and be the most important team on a winning team. And Josh Allen checks that box.
I will say if he beats the Lions this week and has a really good performance, doesn't have to be 6 touchdowns again. That doesn't have to be 3-3 and do something that's never been done before. It doesn't have to be that ridiculous. Let's say they beat the Lions and he has a good 253 total touchdown game, something like that. Just a good game and they beat the Lions. Wrap it up, put a bow on it. We're good to go, I'd imagine, at this point, barring an absolutely epic collapse of epic proportions the rest of the way, because they're probably finishing as the 2 seed at this rate. Let's just say for future sake, they finish as a 2 seed because Kansas City is going to lock up the 1 probably before too long. So let's just say they get the 2 seed, 12, 13 wins. Yeah, that's all. It's a wrap at that point, especially beat the Lions. I think if they lose to the Lions, let's say the Lions do what the Lions do and they just keep trucking along, depending on what Jared Goff does in that game, I think he could push himself right back in that conversation. Because if you take away just the Houston game, he's been otherworldly. That 5 interception game against Houston is the one thing that's just his bugaboo. But everywhere else, he has been absolutely electric. Running the clean it, the best offense in the game right now. He's quarterbacking it. Really good numbers, efficient numbers across the board. I think he's automatically put it for the same reasons like you mentioned last year. The big piece, the quarterback on the top team. But I do agree with you. If the Eagles can continue, just do what they're doing. They've all but locked up the number 2 seed at this point. They just got to go 500 the rest of the way, really. They could even get the 1 seed. I think they could. And Saquon's basically the leading horse as it is. I even think he doesn't break the MVP record, but the other guys slow down a bit. I think he's got a realistic shot. But last year we thought CMC had a realistic shot, slows down the last 2 games, and then it sure enough goes away to where Brock Purdy finished higher than him, if I'm not mistaken. So that's where it gets a little finicky. But I agree with you. I want it to be Saquon. I think he's done more than enough to earn it at this point. I would say if the Bengals didn't suck so horrendously bad, you could throw in Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase in this case. But they would need an act of the Holy Spirit to get them as the 7th seed at this point. So they're can't put them in that role. But I agree with you. The way the league is played this year, it should be Saquon as of right now, or at least him and Josh Allen at like minus 115 plus 150. I think the odds should be closer. But then again, Josh Allen's coming off a thing that's never been done before. So I get why this week the odds spike in his favor. But I think this next Lions game, it's going to be either we put a bow on it or we just crack the box open a little bit. I think the odds will be different after this week. It's either going to be minus 1,000 or it's going to be minus 150, 200, depending on how it goes.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about, I'm looking at the betting odds right now, and Jaden Daniels is a top 10 betting odds. He's number 7 right now in the betting odds for an MVP case. TJ Watt, the only other non-quarterback in the top 10. Baker Mayfield at 10, Jordan Love 11, Joe Burrow on the outside looking in at 12th best odds to win the MVP right now. Just Herbert, Kyler Murray, Jamar Chase take the top 15. But yeah, very interesting. And Bo Nix is in 17th, which again, 2 rookies in the top 20 of MVP odds is kind of crazy. But I just want to throw that out there. It's just like a unique kind of stat line there.
I'm going to launch my formal complaint that Jaden Daniels, while he's been awesome for a rookie, he should not be in the top 10. Let's reel it in. He had an electric first 6-7 weeks, but it has come back down to earth recently. He's awesome. Top 2 for rookie of the year. Let's not forget about Brock Bowers as well, what he's doing for offensive rookie of the year. I'm making the petition Justin Jefferson should be in there. He is the number 2 receiver in the NFL right now behind Jamar Chase. The problem is he also actually has Jordan Addison getting targets on the other side, and they're spreading the ball around on a winning team. Whereas Jamar Chase, we know Joe Burrow and him he's gonna get 12 targets again. That's guaranteed. Justin Jefferson is number 2 as all those stats.
Justin Jefferson has the same odds as Brock Purdy, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, and Tua Tagovailoa.
What you just said should be a federal crime. Like you should be arrested for saying that. The problem is you were speaking the truth.
Yeah. Josh Jacobs, CJ Stroud, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, Geno Smith, all above him, as is Russell in betting odds. And by the way, Sam Darnold, 6 in betting odds favorites for MVP. I don't disagree with that, though. I think he should be a top 10 guy right now.
He deserves to be in there, but I'm still going to formally protest that if you're going to have TJ Watt up there, you're going to have Justin Jefferson up there too. What he has done with that team as well, because that team was supposed to be dirt, and look where they are now. And you can't say number 18 doesn't make everyone's job easier. All you have to do is turn on a game for 2 seconds. 2 seconds, it's everything revolves around 18. Like he is the earth when he's on the field. Everything revolves around it. So I digress. We won't dive too deep into those numbers because the more we look into it, the more annoyed.
It gets weirder and weirder by sportsbook too.
We're gonna wrap it up right there before we both lose our minds. But either way, we're both in agreement. Saquon Barkley hopefully continues because it'd be cool to see a non-quarterback win it for the first time since 2012.
Yep.
I believe 2012. I think that was Adrian Peterson. So it's been that long, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds correct.
Well, either way, someone will tell us if we're wrong. But you know what else has happened for the first time since 2012? Well, not the first time, but Bill Belichick might be coaching again soon, but it won't be in the NFL. It looks like Belichick might be taking over the Tar Heels. And you know what? I'm kind of curious to see. I want to start by saying I don't really like this move. I think Bill should be holding out for an NFL job. I think unless he really thinks he's not going to get an NFL job, he would be a lot better off waiting this one out. But I don't know how I feel about this move, honestly. I feel like with Don Shula's record within sight, he takes over, let's say your Dallas Cowboys, for example, a team with talented players that is really just needs a little bit of a kick in the butt to start winning again. He could pass that record in 2 years, realistically. I don't like North Carolina's. He's going from controlling the like in the NFL front office, all that stuff, to now he's going to deal with NILs, the transfer portal, all of that. Like that just even Nick Saban didn't want to deal with that ish anymore. I don't know if Bill Belichick wants to dive into that. So it's very, very weird. I'm curious because he only has I would have rather not take it, but at the same time, he did construct a 400-page report, or there's a report that he made a 400-page basically Bible of what he needed to take over and how he's going to turn the program around. So maybe he wants it. I just feel like it's very, very weird. It's like he feels like he's not going to get an NFL coaching job. So this is just going to scratch that itch. But I'm kind of curious what you would think because I don't really love the move. Good for the Tar Heels, I guess, but I don't love the move for Bill.
Yeah, I don't know. First of all, you talk about teams that have a lot of money to spend in NIL. Let's start there. UNC should be top 5 because they have been and will always be the number one Jordan school for football. They have always had a Jordan sponsorship for football since, I shouldn't say always. They've had a Jordan sponsorship for football since the mid to late 2000s, when that was really like that really became a push. They beat Oklahoma, they beat Florida to the Jordan game, and they are not turning back on that. So they do have Jordan money to spend, which is more money than Nike in some cases, depending on the sport, really. I mean, if we talk basketball, yes. Football, it's 50-50. But so there's money to be had there, NIL money. And I think this is a situation where NIL is opening up the opportunity for a coach like Belichick to step into the college football realm and treat it like wide open free agency for players. Because now he has money, he can then come and coerce 4 and 5-star players to come there, top tier talent who are in the transfer portal, to come and play at UNC. When in the past, UNC has had to rely on a Mac Brown, who is a great college quarterback, but not a great, or not college quarterback, college coach, but not a great college coach in these players' lifetimes. Bill Belichick was a great NFL coach in these players' lifetimes. So now you have an opportunity to go play for this coach, especially defensive players. You know they're going to be licking their chops here. To go play for this coach at UNC in college with money, who you know is going to make an impact. And who knows, maybe he coerces Nick Saban out of retirement to come help him on defense. I don't know. But I think the opportunity here is for Bill Belichick to cement himself as not just the greatest NFL coach, but to cement himself as the greatest coach of football, period. And I think that's what he's trying to prove here. Is there's a lot of things to do with the NIL. And the reason Nick Saban didn't pan out in the NFL for the reason that he didn't like dealing with the NIL. And that's when money gets involved, the decisions become a lot more difficult for players. And as a coach, you're not trying to recruit a kid in college at the time for money. You're trying to recruit a kid for the potential money he could make in the NFL, but not for the immediate money. Now with the NIL, you have that immediate money. So you have a bargaining chip that you didn't have before. And that's something Bill Belichick knows how to handle well. He's been able to fleece players for contracts in free agency because they're coming to the Patriot organization in the past. And that meant something. So if he can do something similar with UNC where he develops a program and it's a clear, obvious program of success, and now he gets to coerce players with NIL money. I shouldn't say coerce. Bring players in with NIL money. Like, it opens a great opportunity for him, and I think that's what he's going to do. I think now he gets to be GM, he gets to be head coach, and he doesn't have to make draft decisions, which is one place he always sucked at. Now he gets to go and play free agency every year. This guy is literally doing every Madden player's franchise in real life. He gets to take whatever money he wants, whatever money that UNC has to throw at people with all their boosters and all their fancy money they have, and come bring in any player from any school in the transfer portal, which is a crazy thought that now all of a sudden UNC might become a legitimate challenge in the ACC.
I will add there is a report that UNC will increase its NIL package for football from $4 million to $20 million to try and get Belichick. So that definitely makes a big difference. There was also a report that part of the stipulation was his son would be the coach in waiting as well. So maybe he wants to do it for 2 or 3 years and then he jumps. I don't know, but it's very.
I don't know which son he's talking about, whether it's Josh McDaniels or Steven Belichick. But you know what? Doesn't surprise me in the least.
Rumor was it was actually Steven, like the biological son, not the one who looks, not the one with the baby face. But I'm curious to see how it goes. And like you mentioned, the ACC is we'll say very winnable. Like, it's very open.
You got to beat SMU and Clemson right now.
realistically, yeah, that's kind of your worries. So I think it's very interesting. I'm going to be curious to see what it does because if he transforms them into a powerhouse in let's say the next 2 years, that's very interesting. That's good. I don't love it on paper, but you know what? Maybe his girlfriend coerced him into doing it. I don't know. It's very interesting. We'll wait and see how it goes. But
Maybe he just wanted some baby blue and some Tar Heel blue and navy blue color scheme in his wardrobe. Maybe that's all it was.
your Dallas Cowboys got navy blue for him. I mean, they could have helped out.
Yeah. It's the Tar Heel blue thing that I think he really is attracted to. Plus the Jordan logo and everything.
Look, Jerry Jones could be convinced to change the colors of the Cowboys uniforms. They
He's
wear
done it
white all the
before.
time anyway.
Yeah, he's done it before for the dome and that turquoise blue color. God awfulest pant color in the world.
Just absolutely terrible. But we'll get out of that. That'll do it here for the tip off before we go down a very dark alleyway, and that'll take us now into the main event. And for the main event, the main reason a handful of you are probably here, we're going to be talking about college football. The playoff bracket is set. We now know who's playing who and how the playoff is going to go. We don't know who's going to win necessarily, but we know the order.
Oh, we do. We got the script. What are you talking about?
Well, we won't tell them that. Off the top, we got Tennessee taking on Ohio State, number 9 versus number 8. 12, Clemson taking on number 5, Texas. 10, Indiana taking on number 7, Notre Dame. And then number 11, SMU taking on 6, Penn State. With Oregon, Georgia, Arizona State, and Boise State as the teams with the first round bye. And first things first, this is exactly what I imagined it would looking like before the start of the season. Every single one of these teams is exactly what I thought. To a T, not one surprise here, says the biggest liar in the entire world. But
yeah, absolutely expected Arizona State to be the number 4 seed and a bye. Absolutely expected that. And Ashton Genty and Boise State to be a number 3 seed and a bye.
And to see Indiana football make it over Alabama and Ole Miss and all those other squads for sure. But we'll go and take a look through this. I'm going to start with the matchup in the top left corner. In my opinion, the best matchup on paper in the first round, Tennessee taking on Ohio State. Tennessee is also a plus 7.5 point underdog, which I think is very interesting. I've been saying this about Ohio State all year. They have, in my opinion, the best overall roster in college football this year, top to bottom. The problem is your head coach has a very unfortunate track record when it comes to these type of games and play Michigan. And there's a lot of heat on his back after that Michigan loss for the 4th year in a row. I'm worried about their ability to get back on the horse, for a lack of better terms, for this game, especially playing Tennessee, who is no joke. I mean, the running back, I think Sampson is his name. If I got that wrong, it eludes me.
Simpson, I think.
Simpson. He's been incredible this year. He's been one of the best running backs in the country. Quarterback, whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce because I always ruin it. Awesome.
Nico Iamaleava.
What that guy said. He's been
awesome. I have messed it up so many times. I have it memorized now.
Exactly. Tennessee has been really, really good. That's not a team you want to play in the first round if you're not all fully locked in. So Tennessee plus 7.5. I'll be taking a strong look at that. But I don't love this for Ohio State. Even if you get by them, you have to play Oregon, who you already lost to as well. Which, before I let you jump in, I'm going to say that is my biggest issue with the college football playoff is, what's the point of getting the 1 seed? Like, at this point, you don't even like it is. This needs to be like every other tournament where the lowest seed, the number 1 plays the lowest advancing seed, vice versa. It should not just be already lined up like this, because this is the actual bracket. The winner of this game plays Oregon. The winner, like if you're Texas, that's looking pretty nice. Like that. No offense to Arizona State, but if you're Texas, that's who you want to play in the next round. When you look at the field, look at Penn State, you get Boise State, and if Indiana pulls off a miraculous run, you get Penn State. You get to walk right into the finals. So I don't love that they didn't do that with the format. It should be the lowest seed plays the number 1 and vice versa, like every other tournament in the history of sports, basically. My personal opinion. But either way, I'll let you go ahead and jump in looking at Tennessee and Ohio State.
Yeah, Tennessee, Ohio State. It's unique because Ohio State, and this is something I've seen a lot of complaints happen. I was just actually down in Columbus today. And I was talking to some Ohio State fans about some other stuff, but this came up. And it was a problem for all of these guys that the same commentary came from all of them, which is Ohio State has a problem with making the Michigan game the biggest game. And in today's day and age, it's not the biggest game. It used to be you couldn't get to a national championship without beating Michigan. And now you can do whatever you want and not beat Michigan if you can get a title. And that's how kind of the team, but they still put that super high focus on Ohio State, so much so Ryan Day makes it his entire year's commentary as the Michigan game. But what happens after the Michigan game? You just had a heartbreaking loss. You had that giant blow up on midfield, and you stood there looking like an idiot the whole time as the head coach of this team. And now you have to go against a Tennessee team who is excited, who is ready to be in the playoffs. They are solely focused on beating the tar off of whoever they faced, whether it was Ohio State or Georgia. They didn't care. They wanted to beat somebody in round one. And now they have an opportunity to go take an Ohio State team that there's a lot of chinks in that armor right now. Like, you have a lot of holes that can be taken advantage of, and your head coach is number one on that list. Is he mentally ready to coach a big game? Him and Chip Kelly, I've had the same commentary about them my entire life since I've watched them play. They suck in the biggest games. Well, guess what? You have the second biggest game you've ever played or you've ever coached in your life for Chip Kelly, and you have the second biggest game you've ever coached in your life in Ryan Day, because this is for the future of your career. Like, you will probably not have a job at Ohio State if you lose in round one of the playoffs to Tennessee. Can they get themselves focused? Can they get their team focused after everything that happened, all the backlash and BS and all the other things that have come from that, which I still imagine we have more to talk about that. But, that I think this is a huge game, and you said the best game. I think it's the biggest game in round one. I don't think it's the best game. I think there's a better matchup in here that is more intriguing to me. But I think this is the biggest game in round one that means something for the future of Ohio State and for Tennessee. It legitimizes everything they've dealt with the last 5 years. I think it legitimizes every single bit of it and gives them, if they can beat Ohio State, gives them a bargaining chip that they've never had when it came to recruiting, which is, we may be the third best team in the SEC, fifth best team right now, maybe potentially, but third best this year. And we beat the Ohio State. And yeah, I use their nickname for it. Like, that means a lot. So I think this is going to be a very interesting game. I don't know if Ohio State's ready for it. I think Tennessee can pull off an upset in this one, but I think it depends really, to me, Ryan Day's game plan after the script, how this team goes. But I think Tennessee for me is a tough out right now. Good luck trying to deal with Tennessee.
It's going to be tough for any of these teams playing that first round for sure. And we're going to see if Ohio State's able to regather. Next up, I'll go to the matchup right below Clemson taking on Texas. I won't spend a lot of time here because I think everything we talked about with Ohio State, I think it is the opposite for Texas. I think that is an angry team after the way they lost to Georgia. You saw Sarkisian at halftime when they were winning, upset with how the game was going in, basically a home game for Georgia in the SEC championship game. The holds, it, et cetera, like that, which that being a home game for Georgia, well, that's another conversation. But I don't know. That's irrelevant to right now. I think Texas is going to come out firing. I think they're going to come out loaded, explosive. Clemson, they deserve to be here, but there's a reason they're the 12 seed as a champion of their conference. Like, they are not the best team in their conference. I think we can probably both agree on that. I think that maybe not even the second best, honestly, but they got their way here, that they did it. I think Texas comes out. I think Texas is ready to roll. That's going to be a rough out for Clemson. I think Texas is ready to roll.
Yeah, I don't disagree in the fact that it's going to be a tough out for like Texas beating Clemson is not going to be an easy walk. But I will say the thing that makes it a little bit easier in my mind to kind of accept the idea that Texas is going to win here is the injuries that have happened to Clemson. If they're not fully healthy coming into this game, this is I don't want to say cakewalk, but this is it's not going to be a fun game to watch. This might be the most lopsided matchup in round one in my eyes. That's how I look at this. This has the potential to be the most lopsided matchup. And it comes down to just health. I think Clemson, if fully healthy, I think it's a lot better team than I think a lot of people give them credit for. But I think they're not fully healthy, and this is going to be shown. And they're also a step slow. And that's one thing against Texas you can't be, because this team is quick, fast, and they'll get on you in a hurry. Whether Quinn Ewers has a good ankle or not, it doesn't matter. That team will get on you in a hurry. And Texas, they start out hot, and if they can just sustain that throughout the game and not their defense doesn't have any bad lapses, I think it should be an easy Texas walk.
So that when your only two losses are to Georgia and one of them by the skin of two of your teeth,
yeah,
and it took you injuring Carson Beck for it to happen. You don't injure the starting quarterback, you might win, but that's neither here nor there. So next game we'll look at SMU taking on Penn State, the matchup we all expected at any given point this year. Even after the ACC championship game, we all thought SMU would be in there, which, kind of glad they are. I feel like they kind of earned to get here, but I like Penn State a lot. I really do. I think I've been I think I've been the closest thing to a Penn State truther on this show as well. And that's
Uh,
me saying that as someone who doesn't think they should be number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But I think 6 is an appropriate ranking for them. They've been very, very good this year. I think they're a very good team. So SMU is going to make it interesting, especially early. But I think Penn State finds a way late. If this is a big spread, don't trust it. If it's like that 20-point spread or something ridiculous, don't trust that. But I think this is a very fun game on paper. But I do like Penn State.
I can't trust a James Franklin coach team as far as I can throw them. And I do mean the whole team, all 65 guys that are on the roster, because I'm not throwing them very far, and I'm not trusting them that far either. So I think SMU has a legitimate shot here to upset the masses, if you will, and get past Penn State. I don't think it's a shock that I'm saying that. I've been an SMU fan since Rhett Lashley stepped foot in Dallas, and I think it shows every single time that they're on the field that this team offensively is one of the best offenses in the country. And there's not an offense that can really stick with what they were able to do at the end of that ACC championship game just to come back is insane offensively. Like, just to make it a game. Yeah, they lost it in the end, but just to make it a game, that offense is as explosive as can be. And Penn State, they have a bad habit of losing in big games, and it continues year after year after year, game after game. They don't win the games they're supposed to. And in a lot of people's eyes, this is a game they're supposed to win. And this looks like a very winnable game for SMU in my eyes. Like, I think Penn State should probably win. But the rest of my body, the rest of 99% of me is saying SMU is going to make this an upset. Like, that's what this is telling me. Because I just don't trust James Franklin in big games or in playoff games or anything that matters. And that's, yeah, I don't know if there's any other explanation to it. But to me, like we talk about best and biggest games, this I think is going to be the best game of the weekend in my eyes. I think this one is going to be the most exciting to watch, and we're going to see the most explosion one way or the other. But I do think this game is going to be competitive down to the wire. But I do think SMU's offense is just so good; it's hard to overlook them.
I will say the one thing they have to do, though, is they can't do what they did in the ACC championship game where it took them a quarter and a half to 2 quarters of going. You do that against Penn State, I think it's a wrap. Against Clemson,
Yes.
you were able to almost get away with it. I think
Yeah.
you have to come out of the gates looking like SMU. You can't look like UMS out of the gate. You got to be SMU right away. So if they come out firing, this game with Penn State, like you said, is going to be electric because I do think that offense with Aller, Warren, and squad is very, very good. Carter's going to be a top 5 pick on the defensive side. He's going to have to wreak havoc and be in Jennings' pocket the entire game. I feel like it's either a explosive shootout or Penn State rolls. That's the only 2 ways I don't know if SMU rolls necessarily.
SMU has the linebackers to handle the tight ends for Penn State in my eyes. And by handle, I mean keep corralled. But Penn State's offense, Drew Aller loves his tight ends. Without his tight ends, he is nothing. Passing the line. I don't mean that to be mean, but just that's what his passing game relies on is the tight ends to get going, and they'll succeed. So if SMU can trigger on that, it makes Penn State's offense slow down a lot, and not in a good way.
And I think that'll be the interesting part to see what they could do with Penn State's offense for sure. Last but not least, this one's really fun. I like this matchup doesn't feel like it should be a playoff game, but it's fun. Notre Dame and Indiana. Marcus Freeman taking on that Signetti, that sometimes explosive Indiana offense taking on that mostly dominant Notre Dame defense. I want to pick Indiana because it'd be so much fun, but I just can't really do it. I think it's going to be weirdly close for a while, but I think Notre Dame's going to find a way down the stretch. I think they'll make just enough plays. I hate their offense. I hate watching it. Every time I watch it, I think I get a stomach ulcer, but I think they still just find ways to win. Marcus Freeman has that defense firing. I don't think Marcus Freeman's going anywhere, but if he does want to leave, I think this is going to be a nice statement win for if he wants to go somewhere else. This will be that statement win that basically pushes yes, we will take him at this point. But I'm going to take Notre Dame in this one.
Yeah, only place Marcus Freeman's going is to the banker to cash a very large check when he gets his next pay raise, because there's no reason he should ever leave Notre Dame. I think he's ingrained himself to that Notre Dame faithful right now. Just what he's able to do, and especially the players love him. With that said, I love Signetti. I love this offense, and I'm going to keep riding with Indiana because every time I bet against them, they bite me. I grew up a Notre Dame fan, though, and I've learned every time I bet against Notre Dame, they also bite me. So this one's a lose-lose situation because they're going up against a team in Georgia in the next round, whoever wins, that also just loves to spite me, and that's in betting or not betting. So I'm going to lose this entire section of the bracket, and I don't care. But I'm going to say Indiana upsets Notre Dame in this one, which I say I guess technically it's an upset, but these are two really good teams. Like, Indiana is still a really good team. And for almost a full half of a game against Ohio State, plus the fourth quarter, they were competitive. It was just that third quarter, they sucked. And if they can figure that out, they have an opportunity.
That being said, if Indiana does advance, I do not like that game against Georgia for them whatsoever. That is a bad matchup after what Ohio State, Michigan were able to cause chaos in the trenches for them. Indiana's building, I like the future, but in the trenches, you can still see where there's some places to get bullied a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's one thing Georgia does as well as anyone in the country and has for the last 7 years. So I don't like that matchup for Indiana. For their sake, I almost don't want them to win because I don't want to see that matchup. I wish they could be. I wish you could swap like Notre Dame, Indiana with Penn State, SMU. I wish we could just flip those.
I honestly think I want to see Indiana, Notre Dame with where Clemson and Texas is. I want to see the winner of Clemson and Texas play Georgia.
Yeah, I was just keeping us on the same side.
I think honestly, if you did that, that would make my life so much better because I think provides a better matchup against Georgia in the next round, no matter who wins that. And I think it makes it more competitive for whoever goes against Arizona State in that next round as well. I just think that the next round is going to be interesting because I think Boise State and Arizona State deserve their positions. I don't know if they deserve the first round bye. That to me is like, I don't know.
They earn those spots, but I'm still not taking them over. Like,
they deserve a playoff berth for sure.
Yeah.
Like but then again, none of these teams that are left in the bracket would I want to give a position ahead of them either because of the lack of a title. You know, that exactly. I think it should matter. I don't know if I would put anybody there though.
Like, I'll say they earned their spot. They followed the rules. They did everything right. That being said, I would not be picking them. That doesn't mean they are the best. That just means they earned it. There's like, maybe they were wrong though. Maybe Arizona State and little Scatterbug himself runs through Texas / Clemson and then Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee. Maybe we're wrong. They have something special brewing.
That run game is something else from Arizona State, man.
It is. That's for sure. They butchered Iowa State. My goodness. But yeah, very fun college football playoff. I'm looking forward to it for sure. I'm really curious to see what happens in the semifinal rounds once you get past like Oregon faces off with Tennessee, Ohio State, who comes out of that, the Arizona State, Texas, etc. Once we kind of get these first round matchups out of the way, then if there's an upset, then the upset gets cleared. However you want to do it, that's where I'm curious where we presume like Oregon and Georgia might be there, but then who are they facing? Does like Ashton Genty and Boise State sneak out of there because of that first round bye? Does Scatterbug scatter his way out there? Like does Clemson and Dabo Swinney have one left in the tank thanks to the blood of our Lord and Savior? I don't know. Like, I'm just really curious what kind of magic pulls off there. So I'm really looking forward to this. Everyone be sure to drop in the comments. Let us know who you think is winning the whole thing and how you think the first round is going to go. But as we get close to the end of the show, we do have one last thing to get to, which is going to take us into Kelsey's favorite part of every show. And that is, of course, crunch time. And for crunch time, it's usually known for a quick rant, a recap. It's just a statement, something like that. We're going to go and combine on this one, and we're going to talk about something that we both consider absolutely embarrassing. And we're going back to the state of Ohio for this one. And frankly, there's a lot to get into here. So I'm just going to share the headline with us right now. Ohio State Representative Josh Williams introduced the OHIO Sportsmanship Act. The act would make it a felony offense to plant the flag in the center of the shoe. Kelsey, go first. I don't got anything nice to say. Mom told me not to say anything nice at all, so I got to think this through.
Okay, so I think this is unique in the aspect, before I get into my conversations today with actual Ohio State fans about this. The unique part about this is that it is anyone who plants a flag.
Literally anybody.
At midfield at Ohio Stadium. Meaning there could be somebody who plants an Ohio State flag at midfield that is charged with a felony. First of all, where are we at with a country when we're charging people with felonies for something like putting a flag in the ground, putting a post in a ground? How is that a felony? First of all. Secondly, who's going to keep in touch with? Are the same cops that were keeping them apart going to be the same cops that are going to do this? Like, okay, you have cameras, sure, but then you have to do extradition laws for out-of-state players, and like, there's a whole ball game of problems with all of this that I just don't even have the brain to get into right now. I don't have the legal background to like address this and think it's a terrible idea beyond that. But I will say this. In my conversations with actual Ohio State fans who live in Columbus, most are supportive of the bill and think it should be passed. DJ's reaction sums up my reaction live in person with folks saying, what? That all the things we could possibly do, and this is the one, and I don't like to get political. But if this is what you're wasting your time on in a state capitol, drafting a bill called the Ohio Sportsmanship Act.
Oh, no, the OHIO. There are dots
You're right. My bad.
Spelled it out on us even worse.
My bad. I'm surprised you didn't call it the, in quotation marks, copyright symbol, OHIO, Sportsmanship Act at the rate they're going. Like, I don't get it. Maybe if this is a national landmark, it's not. Maybe it's a state landmark, it's not. It's nothing of significance other than a large stadium. It's no different than me going in my front lawn and putting a flag of whatever I choose to that is non-offensive to the public in the ground. I can go put an Auburn flag with an FU Bama flag next to it in the middle of my lawn, and just that's not a problem. It should be a problem.
But honestly, just for that.
Yeah, I don't know if they make those either. I need to get one. But anyways, that's not a problem. But somehow getting the crap beat out of you results in a full-on act of state representatives to bring a sportsmanship act into it because your team couldn't handle and your fan base couldn't handle getting the snot beat out of you for the fourth straight season. What? And mind you, I'm very nice to people when I talk to them in person, and I try not to be mean. And I try not to say what's actually on my mind. But today was the most difficult conversations I've ever had about sports-related things because I had to try to not yell at them for being stupid. It's a bunch of people who I feel like they have never played a game of football in their life. They don't understand how much respect you can have for another player at the same time as getting the crap beat out of you. Yeah, it's upsetting. It's embarrassing. If you want to fight somebody after the game, that's a you problem. That's not a competitive problem. That's not a sportsmanship problem. That's a person problem. You have 60 minutes to beat the living snot out of another person. And you know what? When I was playing, when I beat the snot out of the living snot out of the defensive lineman across from me, I had more respect for that player after the game and had no problem walking up and shaking their hand, whether they were talking smack or not. I didn't care because after the game, that's a respect. You beat the crap out of each other for 60 minutes and you both survived. You both made it through. And you know what? If somebody got injured on that field, everybody feels terrible about it. There should. And if you don't, there's a problem in culture involved in there. There should be no bill or act presented. This is dumb. This is just people who don't belong in sports trying to put their neck in sports, and it doesn't belong here. And I'm going to take a line that was told to an athlete at one point in time, and I'm going to apply it here. Shut up and make real laws.
Shut up and craft.
Like, this is dumb. Right. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. If you don't like getting beat, hire a coach that can actually beat the other team. Get players that can actually win a game that matters. Do not rely on some kind of form of government, because you know what happens when government gets involved in sports? Go back to the 1960s and find out.
Well, see, you took this for a much more political turn than I thought, so I'm going to take this in a much more simplest terms. This might be the biggest weenie hut commander, general, senior, anything I've ever seen in my entire life. I'll recap. You don't want them to plant the flag in your stadium. How about you don't get clapped 4 years in a row? It's really that simple. B, should they do it? No, is it kind of a dickheaded move on Michigan's part? Yeah, that's why you should have beat them, so that didn't happen. Or go do it in their stadium next year. You mentioned, too, they do not need to be passing a law to make this a felony. Oh, but what about the fight afterwards? People fight. That's okay. This should be the NCAA saying, all right, no flagging for anybody. Then that's a fine, school fine or whatever it be. That's not a state legislator's job to make it illegal just in our stadium. Nobody can do it. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Okay, not ever seen, but it's the most ridiculous thing I've seen this week, guaranteed. Just absolutely. I really think I'm starting to develop like a third man boob or something from the amount of soyness coming from this statement. Like this is just absolutely unbelievable what is going on right now. Wet tissue paper in a monsoon is not this soft. Well, that's because it's disintegrated, but you get my point. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. I hope, as a former resident of the state of Ohio, that this does not pass, because the fair people of fair-mindedness will never be able to live this down, unfortunately. You will forever lose every argument because this will be thrown in their face. This is worse than the Deshaun Watson trade as far as Ohio sports go, if it gets signed into law. The fact, not quite yet. It's not that far yet, but this is the worst thing for Ohio sports that this is even brought up, and it would be even worse if it gets passed into law. This would be even more embarrassing than the whole the conundrum. Just
So
absolutely ridiculous.
here's what the felony would bring. It's a 5th-degree felony in the state of Ohio. It could bring up to 6 to 12 months in prison.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. Also, up to $2,500 fine and up to 5 years of community control probation. Examples of 5th-degree felonies in Ohio include breaking and entering, forgery, legitimate crimes, receiving stolen property, illegal gambling, and theft over $1,000. All valid. Now, what happens if you get a 5th-degree felony? You will have difficulty finding employment, getting a loan, or being admitted into college, and it can also negatively impact child custody, adoption, immigration, and volunteering.
Basically, you're screwed.
Yeah. So it takes 10 years to potentially expunge a 5th-degree felony from somebody's background. So you're telling me that you're going to penalize somebody for 12 years before, during, or after a game if they plant a flag in the center of the field? Just make it make sense.
I want to also add to, like, this literally only specifically says Ohio State, and they said so. That's not even every stadium in Ohio. That is literally just this one. So if you do like Nippert Field in Cincinnati or anything else, no problem. Which Ohio State fans, Kelsey likes to make fun of you as much as the next guy, and sometimes some of you annoy me. But as a whole, I feel sorry for 90% of you that this is going to be forever. This is going to be attached to you, because no matter what you say, this is going to be thrown at your face if this gets signed into law. And a lot of you do not deserve that. Some of you,
I would like to.
A lot of you know.
I would like to redo my fan rankings as the worst fan base and bump Ohio State up to number 1 from number 1B. I think they firmly hold the opportunity for being number 1 just for the stupidity. Followed shortly. No, they're still 1B, but it's closer than it should be to Alabama.
All because of one man has to be a complete and utter weenie and put this out there, and then of course people will get behind it. Just
yeah. This puts Ohio State fans up there with a guy who legitimately poisoned an entire ecosystem in Auburn, Alabama, because they put a T-shirt on a statue and didn't permanently put the T-shirt on a statue. Literally put it up there with Scotch tape.
Before we get out of here, I'm gonna wrap up the irony of it's called the sportsmanship bill when the team who started the fight is your team. Yep. Like your team was the one who was like, no, we can't have that. We got to fight about it. Which, okay, you want to fight about it, that's fine. I'm the same person last week said after Trevor Lawrence got decapitated, shout out to Evan Ingram for trying to fight him afterwards. That's a situation where I think it's permitted. At the end of the game,
during the game,
and it's defending your guy. Right now, you're defending a piece of grass after you just got whipped across it for 60 minutes. Like not whipped. It was a close game. You get my point. You lost it for the 4th year in a row. This is embarrassing. I hate this for sports. Normally we like to end on something funny, but this is funny in all the wrong ways, unfortunately. But let's just hope that enough sane people are like, this is stupid. We have more important things to do, or this is stupid. Nobody deserves to have this as a literal law in the state, along with everything you pointed out earlier about enforcing it on top of it. Because someone's going to test it right away. Just
guaranteed. It might be me. I might go try to get a 5th-degree felony just to see what happens.
Well, you're an Ohio resident. That might be harder to just get out of this to it. But you know what? If you want to test it, just let me know so I can.
I'll see if we can get a sponsor, and maybe Michigan. Somebody from Michigan will sponsor me to do it.
Now we're getting into a can of worms here that I don't think we're quite ready for. But let us know down below what you all think of this as well too. Thank you all so much for joining us this week on the High Low Sports Podcast. Hopefully you're having a wonderful holiday season ahead, and we will see you all again next week.